Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Nad Knows, a podcast where we explore the intertwining of science, mythology, and personal creativity. I'm Nadley, and I'll be your guide on this journey into the depths of human knowledge and experience. Whether it's exploring ancient myths, breaking down complex scientific concepts, or chatting with guests about their creative journeys, even if it's not a traditional creative field. Nad Knows aims to feed your curiosity and maybe even inspire your own creative endeavors. From solo deep dives into specific topics to interviews with thinkers and creators, this podcast is your new go-to for a stimulating blend of fascinating education and creative inspiration. Now, you might be wondering why I chose these particular themes, and some of them may be a little off the wall and seem disjointed and disconnected, but they've always fascinated me personally, and more importantly, they're the lenses through which we can better understand ourselves and the world around us. By weaving together insights from diverse fields, I believe we can create a richer, more colorful tapestry of the human experience. And maybe someday I'll come together and accept one another. These topics are not only academically intriguing, but deeply personal. They've shaped my own life and thinking in profound ways, which I'll share as we go along throughout this podcast. I'll sprinkle my story throughout, and I hope that by sharing these stories and insights, you'll find pieces that resonate with your own life and spark inspiration for your personal journey. I have a wealth of topics to explore with you, from analyzing creation stories across cultures to diving right into ourselves to understand what's going on inside of us more intimately, or the evolution of mythologies, how they've shaped over time. Did you know that Norse mythology wasn't always centered around the pantheon of gods, Odin, Thor? Before all of that, there was a completely different Norse mythology that did not include those gods, and how they evolved over time is really interesting. But first, I think it's important that you know a little bit about my story, how I got here, why these themes resonate with me so strongly, and why I want to share them with y'all. Growing up, my family was very religious, and I was involved in nearly all church activities, especially as I was growing up in Texas when we moved in the year 2000. I went to Wednesday night church, Sunday church. I was involved in the youth. I was all about it. I loved all the time that I spent there. My sister went on a mission trip to Africa when I was about 7 years old, and it was the first of a few that she took. This inspired me a lot. I mean, I was a 7-year-old and my sister was going to Africa, and to me that was just amazing and mind-blowing, and I wanted to be like her, and I wanted to travel as well, and getting letters from her and seeing pictures and experiencing these cultures and helping these people was just really inspiring to me. So I knew that at a young age I wanted to travel too. And when I was 12, I got my chance. The church that we attended, that I was very involved with, had an ongoing partnership with a congregation in the United Kingdom, in Wales. We stayed in people's homes, we volunteered at schools, we had get-togethers, Bible studies, but really we were just immersed in the Welsh culture. We made friends. It was like a partnership of the churches, and it was really wonderful. I went on more trips with my church to Wales, one during spring break, another over the summer, and all of them were wonderful. I became very close with the Welsh people I met there and still am to this day. And I hope they may be listening to this at some point. Hey, Marge. But these are some of the best and closest memories I hold in my heart. After 3 trips to the same place, though, I ultimately felt called to join another mission trip organization, the one that my sister had gone to Africa with. They helped build women's shelters, did manual labor, really worked at helping people, not just spreading the word of Jesus. I was sad not to go back to Wales because I had made a lot of friends and I was going to miss seeing them again this year, but I was also really excited to go somewhere else and actually help people while also getting to travel and experience a new place. So it was a hard decision to come to not go to Wales again, and I was sad about making that decision. But one day after the sign up to go to Wales that year had been out, my youth pastor at the time, who I was very close with and loved dearly, he confronted me after everyone had left after the youth service on a Sunday. He asked why he hadn't seen my name on the sign-up list, and I had to break it to him that I wasn't going to be going this year, and then I decided to go on a different mission trip for the summer. In that instance, a switch was flipped in him, and he just turned on me, yelling at me, waving his finger in my face, and telling me I had made a mistake, that I didn't know what God wanted me to do, and that I was making the wrong decision. remember I was at this time only 15 years old and bawling my eyes out. And there was this grown man, red-faced, having a full-on temper tantrum in front of me. It was overstimulating. It was hurtful. It was embarrassing. It was a lot of things. He said he wanted to sit down with my parents and talk to me about it, and that I needed to change my mind and go to Wales because they were counting on me. I apparently would have been one of the few that had been before, let alone 3 times before. I knew my way around. I knew some of the streets and how to navigate. And so ultimately they were counting on me to be a leader. Mind you, I was not a part of the church. I was very heavily involved, but I was not a part of the church organization. I was 15. I ran out to where my dad was waiting for me in the car, and I didn't even really tell him what happened. I think I just told him that I was sad about not going to Wales that year because he knew that I was going to Greece. Despite my youth pastor's objections, I was determined, and I had already signed up for the Greece trip through that same organization that my sister had gone with called Teen Missions. We went to Florida for a boot camp. It was very not like a vacation or just a fun little thing. We stayed in places that were non-traditional during boot camp and camped, did chores, had to pour the water for our toilets and make sure we had enough toilet paper that we had to bring ourselves, and cooked and cleaned. We learned how to pour concrete, do various manual labor tasks, which we would then implement into the countries that we were going to by way of service. In Greece, we stayed on the side of a mountain, Mount Pelion, where, according to Greek mythology, centaurs originated, and which is just one of the many things throughout my life that has just piqued my interest in these myths and history and anthropology. But the view looking down to Volos and the Aegean Sea was unforgettable. Eating apricots straight from the tree during our morning devotions, it was truly a life-changing experience. But we cleaned highways, we painted schools, cleared land. One time, a local stopped when we were cleaning the highway, asked who we were and what we were doing. And their astonishment made me feel like this should be the only type of mission work, by just helping. And while I was there, I heard his voice echo in my mind often that you don't know what God wants you to do and you're not doing what's according to God's plan. And he was saying those things to me, and how does he know God's plan for me, or how do I not know and I should just blindly trust that you know God's plan for me? So I was reflecting on that because this was a Christian organization still, and we had devotions and we had Bible lessons, and it was very religious. I was really conflicted internally while going through this whole experience. And I heard him in my mind telling me I'm not where God wants me to be, but having these experiences and being so connected to the land there. And we lived in these little barracks that were, it seems like an old summer camp on the side of this mountain. I mean, we take this bus up the windiest roads to get up at the top of this mountain, Mount Pelion. And there was no hot water. There were squat toilets where you have to squat and there's just a hole in the ground. I figured out that if you took a shower in the morning, because the sun was directly beaming on the pipes, so the first shower, part of the first shower, you got hot water. So I would try to wake up extra early and beat everyone there and get a tiny bit of that sun-warmed hot water on the top of the mountain. And it was just amazing. My favorite spot during our morning devotions that we had, where you were just encouraged to read and journal, I would sit under this apricot tree and just pluck them for my breakfast in the morning. And all of those moments, it just felt if God wanted me anywhere, it was there. And I was there. And it really, that day that he confronted me and it devolved, I lost a lot of trust in him and in authority figures like him from that point on. And when I got back home, I tried to go back to my old church one time, and it felt like a completely foreign entity to me, somewhere I used to feel so comfortable and welcome, but I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel close to anyone anymore. It just felt wrong. No one cared what happened, but I also didn't tell anyone what happened. Why would they know? It was a really weird feeling. It was a big shift in my life, and I didn't really know where to turn. I never went back to that church, but I did try to go to a couple different churches. and different formats, like going to a coffee shop, little Sunday service. I thought maybe that would be better than a big church, because my previous church was maybe what you could consider a mega church. But I just never went back to those new places either. Any of them that I tried, fearing that they might turn on me too in the same way that he did. And just after so long, I began to identify less with that side of me and more with a new perspective, and a new perspective that I had to develop myself. And for a time, I feel like I did get very cynical towards Christianity and my upbringing in religion. I don't know if I'd ever have called myself an atheist outright, but I definitely started questioning everything I believed in. And this really did shuttle me into a world of curiosity in finding out how I want to see the world and how I want to experience spirituality. And I really experienced a lot growing up through my religion. I had many experiences that were very impactful and not just a surface level show up on Sunday Christianity. I really felt in touch with myself through Christianity and with the people around me. But after this kind of earthquake and shattering, in a sense, hey Homer, I didn't really know where to turn. I didn't really know what to look at. And it just led me to having to figure it out myself and develop my own mythology and my own inner world that I can navigate and I know how to navigate. And like I said, there were points where I was not so certain about this God in the sky, and I still don't know. I'm still open to everything. But since then, I've come back around to really appreciating my Christian upbringing and the things that I learned, even the things that I learned on that Greece mission trip. It was very Bible-centric, and we learned a lot. There was a game you had to memorize different scriptures, and it was like a quiz game. It feels embarrassing to talk about in some ways, about that past self, because I don't identify like that anymore. But I really appreciate that injection of knowledge and introspection that I was doing at a young age. And I think that is something that I've kept with me. And then just trying to try on different hats and just learn and not plant my flag. I do feel like I have some trust issues because of that. And like I said, with authority figures, but I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to learn about everything that was out there and just try to come up with my own point of view. I turned 16 while in Greece, and I came home to start my senior year of high school. I began community college right after that. Initially, I wanted to go into some kind of history or anthropology degree. Obviously, I was at that time very interested in these same topics, and it just felt right to follow my interests. And after taking some art history classes in college, I considered changing my major to that as well. But all of that came to a screeching halt after taking my first biology class. Shout out to my teacher, Brian Loveland at TCC. He was amazing. And getting my tests back with straight A's every time. My friends from the class were shook. They were not getting the same grades as I did. And this made me think, if it was so easy for me and hard for others, maybe I should consider changing my major to biology. I even talked to my art history teacher about it, asking her what I should do. She couldn't give me much advice, but after that conversation, I felt STEM maybe was a safer choice, and I officially changed my major to biology. And even though the classes were much harder once I transferred to the University of Texas Arlington, I was thrilled by all of the classes. Learning about the inner workings of the worlds all around us and in us was utterly fascinating to me. It was just, there's so much more going on than even just what you learn in cellular biology in your undergraduate or in high school. It's so fascinating. It's just a little world. And I was thrilled by all of the learning. And while others most dreaded classes like genetics and OChem, I loved them. They were very hard. Genetics was one of the few that I did not get an A in, but I was still very interested. I still have my textbook today, and it'll probably come in handy for some of the upcoming podcasts. But I progressed my way through college. I graduated in 2015, cum laude, with a biology degree. And all throughout college, I thought I wanted to work in research and development. So that was what my plan was. But it was also a longtime dream of mine to backpack through Europe. So after graduating college, I set off on a 3-month adventure across 15 countries in Europe. It was like a mainline injection of vastly different cultures, like straight into my bloodstream. I was reconnected deeply with my Danish roots when I visited Denmark and some friends that I have there. captivated by the dragon history of Slovenia. I grew up and there was this book that I would read. I need to look up and try to find this book, but it was about this dragon that lived on an island. And so I've always, since a young age, have been fond of dragons and dragon lore. And so Slovenia, it's just dragons everywhere. There's rich culture with the dragons. So I was just soaking it up. And there was just artistry oozing from every corner. It was just a very different experience than living and growing up in the United States. And even I had traveled to the United Kingdom and Wales and Greece and France before, and that was just a nice little taste. It was just 3 months nonstop go, tons of input and seeing all this beauty and just trying to take it in. It was very expansive. I even got to revisit some of my Welsh friends that I hadn't seen in nearly 7 years since the last time I had been to Wales with those mission trips. I could do a whole podcast on that Europe trip alone, how expansive it was for me, the wild situations we got ourselves in, and how it changed me afterwards. But those 3 months came to an end and I had to go back to reality. Just having finished my degree in biology, I felt like it was the right course to work in research and development. And I ultimately got a job at the UNT Health Science Center in Fort Worth as a lab assistant, where we were working on curing macular degeneration by the use of stem cells, harvesting directly from the patient's body, getting the skin cells, and through a series of chemical things you expose them to, converts them through the stages to become a progenitor stem cell, which then can be anything. So then injected into the retina of those macular degeneration patients to ultimately give them new retina cells and give their eyesight back. That was the goal. The work that the lab was doing was cutting edge and amazing, but although it sounds like an exciting day to day, it is very monotonous. And I just had a bachelor's degree while everyone else there were PhDs, and I was the one doing the menial lab work, taking care of the lab mice and rats, sequencing their DNA. And if they didn't have the right DNA sequences we wanted, I would have to be involved in humanely ending their life as well. And those were the worst days. So after working there for a short time, I just knew that this was not for me. Although they were working on wonderful things, you really have to have a long-term 10 to 15-year vision for your career. Not only did my recent Europe trip make me long for something more, but also just who I am as a person. I need personal interaction, and being stuck in a lab pipetting all day was just not for me. So I quit the lab and I didn't really know what to do. But shortly after, I started serving and bartending at the Chili's at the Dallas Love Field Airport. Shout out to all my friends who I work there with. It was hard work, but if you ever wanted to make some serious money in the service industry, the airport is one of the best places to work. It was hard work, but it was financially rewarding. The constant flow of customers, especially those needing a drink before flying, which I never knew how prevalent the fear of flying was. I've never experienced it. Maybe that's why I travel so much. But it just showed me a different face of human behavior and the need for numbing to be able to go on a flight. So I gained a lot of compassion for those people. But after a year of saving almost every penny, I left to fulfill my heart's desire again and travel. This time to Bali. I was inspired by my friend Jade, who had been living there before, and it just looked amazing. It just really felt like what I really needed, and maybe get a little bit of eat, pray, loving out of it. During this time, I saw a lot of people working on their laptops in the same cafes I was, and I was just like, I want to do that too. I want to be able to make money and work on stuff while I'm in these locations that I want to travel to and learn more about. So I asked around, and a lot of people were either entrepreneurs themselves and started their own businesses that they're working on, or another big answer was online marketing. So I said, say less. I left Bali. I was very sad to leave Bali. It was really an amazing time. The people there are just absolutely wonderful. I learned so much by just the kindness and love that the Balinese people show to everyone, no matter who you are. But I left Bali. I returned home and had enough in my savings to buy a laptop. So I bought a laptop, this one right here, and I built a website. I started learning. I tried to put myself out there for some various marketing jobs and freelance efforts, mostly focusing on social media and copywriting, things like that. And it really didn't take off the way I was Delulu, I was just thinking that it was all gonna work out, which it did, but I thought it was gonna be like way quicker than it was. And I ultimately was running out of my savings. I was not happy that it was taking longer than I wanted, but I wasn't going to give up on the dream. I decided that if I was going to get another job, probably in serving again, that I would at least want it to be where I could live somewhere fun. And I decided to move to Austin, or I decided that Austin may be one of the places I wanted to move. So I went down there, resumes in hand, and stopped at a few local places. The 6th Street location at Easy Tiger pretty much hired me right on the spot, asked, when are you moving down here? I said, I guess this weekend, and started the next week. I already had a network here. One of my best friends lived here. One of my brothers lived here. And so I moved in with my brother and his wife, which forever grateful for them to give me a space to land while I was just in this transformative time in my life. So after a little while working in Austin, I was getting really bummed out because I was still trying to put effort towards getting something going online so that I could travel more and not be fully dependent on the location for work. And I was disappointed that it was still taking so long, even though I still kept trying and posting on Reddit and things like that. But I had a moment with myself and said, look, just keep trying. You're enjoying where you're working now. I loved working at Easy Tiger. The other employees, the other servers and bartenders, it was like a family. We had so much fun. I still keep up with a lot of the girls and people I worked with. We traveled to New Orleans together for a festival once. I will love them for the rest of my life and like super grateful for my short time at Easy Tiger. And I just had to have that talk with myself about, look, just be happy with where you are. It's badass. Like I got to meet tons of really cool people, even musicians and bands that I've loved since I was a teenager. Shout out to Manchester Orchestra, who came in a couple times, and I got to meet them and hang out with them. And I'll try to put the picture up to show that. But I just was like, chill, just keep working and focus on what you want to do and just enjoy where you're at. And it was seriously, now it obviously feels like just a snap of the fingers that right after that, I was introduced to this startup company that needed someone for social media. My dear friend Jade, who I traveled in Bali with, she had this person that had come into her sphere that needed some work, but she wasn't able to facilitate that. So she shuttled them over to me because she knew I was trying to get started. And it was off to the races after that. It started small, doing social media, helping with their startup, but I can do things. I can figure stuff out. It was a startup. A lot needs to get done. It went from 5 hours a week to 40 hours a week pretty fast. And I loved working there. This position eventually grew into a full-on marketing coordinator position. It was a CBD company that had supplements that incorporated other botanicals and adaptogens along with CBD to target the things people most struggle with, like energy, sleep. And I really loved what I was doing. I loved researching the botanicals that were in the products, and my biology degree was definitely coming in handy. Making fun graphics, learning how to build email systems, running ambassador programs, doing events, and just spreading the word about these supplements. It was really great, and it was really helping people, and I loved that work. And I was finally able to do what I wanted to do. I was working enough. I could travel while I was working. And when I was with that company, I was able to travel and live in Mexico for a month, road trip around the United States multiple times, go back to one of my favorite countries in Europe, Croatia. And I was finally that person that was working on their laptop in these exotic locations, making a living while doing what I love and experiencing new cultures. I felt like I had made it, and I did. Throughout my travels, I just tried to immerse myself as much as I could in the local history when I wasn't working. Nights spent awake, endlessly researching the Huichol people who I had just learned about during some of my travels in Mexico. I got lost in their creation story. Their art is just mesmerizing, full of color and life. The way they see life and find balance and value in all the things around them. And that's just one example, and one that I'll have to explore in a later episode. But I'm almost caught up with where I'm at today. I stayed with that CBD company for nearly 4 years, but the pandemic caused a lot of turbulence. I got furloughed for a time, and after trying to continue working and going back to work with them, it was very hard and just felt disjointed because when I got furloughed, some other employees did not, other employees that had been there for a very short time with a much cheaper hourly rate. which I understood, of course, they were some crazy times, but I did nonetheless feel disrespected because of all I had done to build the brand and been with them since before they even launched and brought them to the place that they were years later. Eventually, I just felt that it was time for me to leave that company behind. I transitioned to working for a marketing agency who I had got connected through that previous job. So it's important just to always be open. There's always new opportunities based on the path that you've been exploring. I started with them as a graphic designer, and I quickly grew once my then new boss could see how capable I was. I took on more and more responsibility and eventually was offered the position of creative director of that agency. And if you can't really tell by now, I love creativity. So creative director was legitimately my ultimate dream job. And just being able to oversee the creative process and have my hand in getting larger amounts of content created, whether it's websites, social media, other marketing materials, made at a faster rate, having the ability to coach those under me, that's what I really longed to do. But in reality, we were still a fledgling agency. And so I took on more responsibilities than just that of a creative director. And while I'm so grateful for all of the work there with that agency and all the clients that I met and just everything I learned, but my body was tapping out. I was online all the time. I was developing new symptoms of anxiety, and I just felt like it was not sustainable. Being online all the time is very taxing, and just like wondering what next email is coming and what's the next fire drill. And it got a lot. And I can't tell you how many times when I was visiting my family in Oregon, my nieces would gripe at me for being on my laptop when they just wanted to play. And I'm like, I want to play too. The demand at work was increasing, and at the same time, my creative projects inside of me were just percolating and just like begging to be let out, but they didn't have the space to come out. In reality, I just felt like I was giving all of my creative energy away for these various clients, and it just felt really suffocating. The little girl inside me, my inner child, just wanted to be curious and play and ask questions and learn and experience new things and get hands dirty. It just felt like she really got put to the side and she couldn't take it anymore. I started getting the idea of making a podcast while I was still working at the agency about these things that are really interesting to me. But I thought the spending more time after work recording and putting together episodes, it just felt like that was impossible. But April 1st, 2024 marked the first day where I began to regain my creativity for only my projects. And it has felt so good. If I want to paint in the morning, I can paint. If I want to write my book in the morning, I can write my book. If I want to garden, if I want to work with my plants, I can do that. I can skate. I can play with my cats. It's up to me. And the feeling of true creative freedom is intoxicating. And it really has started to breathe life back into my true self and back into that inner child that just wants to learn and be creative and have fun. So I'm proud of every experience that brought me here today, and I'm excited to share a sneak peek into my brain. This podcast is born from newfound freedom to explore the topics that really fascinate me without restraint. From science of creation myths to the intricacies of my past digital nomad life, to my professional life, to sharing conversations with other people that may have non-traditional jobs that creativity is a huge part of, and just exploring worldviews and trying to learn from every culture that has something to give to us to make our day-to-day easier. I'm here to share all that and more. So if you're curious about any of these things, or if this sounds interesting at all to you, you're in the right place. I'm releasing this first episode along with another episode about the creation stories from all over the world, from all points in history, and trying to gain understanding of how different cultures view the creation of this earth. So if you feel like binging another podcast, just hit the next one and I'll see you there.